Welcome, Sens Talk.
Russell winds in, feeds it back across the strike, and scores! Brady Tkachuk makes it 2-0. Giroux, hit along, scores!
Tim Stutzock cross, Tkachuk score! The captain, Brady Tkachuk, buries it with 1:18 to go.
See you later. Go Sens, go! Before this video begins, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your unwavering support as we just passed 3,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. That is right. We are now past 3,000 subscribers. Thank you also very much for your unwavering support this year and over the last 12 years or so. It's been a decade plus of Sens Talk. It was just a couple years ago we passed 1,000 subscribers, and now a few years later we are closer to 5K than we are to 1K. It's unbelievable the amount of support and love you guys have shown for myself and for the Sens Talk team as a whole. It means the world to me. Thank you so very much. We won some hardware last year. We won some more hardware this year. You know, YouTube channel of the year and of course blog of the year. I mean, your support has meant the world to me, and being able to make this content for you guys and cover our Ottawa Senators has been a dream come true, and this is just the beginning, my friends. Mark my words, we are not stopping anytime soon, and the best is yet to come. So thank you so very much for your support, and again, for the awards, for the thousands of subscribers. I mean, I don't know why I don't deserve it. I'll tell you that much. I appreciate you all so very much. I'm just a guy, making videos out of passion, and I'm just glad all of you guys enjoy them. So thank you all so very much. And with that, let's get into today's video. Welcome to Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. In today's video, we're going to take a look at some free agent targets your Ottawa Senators may take a look at for the remainder of this year's free agency period. Now, look, I know, I can hear the comments already. We are like a week and a half away from August. We're less than 2 months away from the opening of camp. Why are we talking about free agents still? None of the quote-unquote top free agents are even still available. I hear you, I get it, but look, Ottawa doesn't need the quote-unquote top free agents. They need some depth, I'll be honest with you. They need some depth, especially in that bottom six on the forward core and that bottom pairing for the blue line for the defensemen. So let's just jump right into it. So the first player that I want to take a look at is, look, I'll preface this by saying that it's a bit of a dream scenario. I don't know for sure if it will happen. In fact, it would be kind of a surprising move for the Ottawa Senators. This is more of a move that I would like the Sens to make because I like the flexibility it provides for the Ottawa Senators in that bottom six. I'm talking about Tyler Johnson. You probably could have got that by the thumbnail of this video, but this is a player that isn't your prototypical Ottawa Senator. He's 5'8". We know Staios and co. loves big boys. So right off the bat, not exactly the prototypical Ottawa Senator player. And especially, look, for a fourth line guy or a guy in your bottom six, he is on the smaller end of things, no doubt about it. He was on the Chicago Blackhawks last year, and he was a key part of their offense. Not a lot of offensive guys for the Chicago Blackhawks, other than, of course, Connor Bedard, right, and a couple others. So he actually got a lot of power play time, which we'll talk about in a second here. But Tyler Johnson's a guy where he's not your prototypical fourth line center, and frankly, probably wouldn't be the best option out there for the fourth line, which you'll see later in this video. But what I would say is he's a guy that could play on the fourth line, no problem in my opinion. This is a well-established NHL veteran, a cup-winning NHL veteran, I might add, who's played, quite a bit in the National Hockey League, close to 1,000 NHL games. This is a guy that can play on your fourth line, I suppose, but can also play on your third line, bring some offensive ability, and can, once again, bring some more flexibility to your bottom six. You can move around guys. Like Amadio, for example, can go to the fourth line. You can scratch a Gregor, for example, for, a Tyler Johnson. The list goes on. There's a lot of, scenarios you can play with adding another strong, center and a very strong offensive player in Tyler Johnson. It never hurts to bring offense to your bottom six, which has always been a point of concern and a point of struggle for the Ottawa Senators, that being their bottom six. They've been incapable over the last few years to produce offensively. Tyler Johnson could absolutely help fix that, like Amadio and like David Perron. So the 33-year-old center last year played in 67 games, scoring 17 goals, 14 assists for 31 points. Now keep in mind, 16 of those points were on the power play, so essentially half of his points were from the power play. So that is absolutely something to keep in mind. Now, a point of concern here absolutely is his faceoff rate last year was 44%, but that's the lowest of his NHL career. If you look at his stats throughout his NHL career, that is the lowest by 4 to 5 points. So I would expect that to round back into form and go back to his average, which is 49.4% in his NHL career. Now, speaking of his NHL career, in 738 games, 193 goals, 238 assists for 431 points, nearly a point every 2 games. Pretty solid, and as I just mentioned, a career face-off rate of 49.4%, which is around league average, which is once again why I say he's on the lower end of things in terms of his height, and he absolutely is more of an offensive guy, but he can win the face-offs. And from your fourth-line center, you need a skilled center, you need a center that can win face-offs, and you need a center that knows what he's doing. Tyler Johnson fits the bill on all 3 fronts. Now, in the playoffs, this is a guy that brings a lot of experience in that regard. I already mentioned cup-winning guy. This is a cup winner right here, and it shows in his playoff stats. 116 games, all right? I mean, that's insane. Think about it like this. If Tyler Johnson joins the Ottawa Senators, he has more playoff games than essentially everyone on the roster, okay? So right off the bat, like a David Perron, for example, this is a great ad if they do so, just off his experience and cup-winning pedigree and veteran, attributes he can bring on and off the ice. That's just a great plus on top of the fact he's still a pretty solid player. Once again, 116 playoff games, 32 goals, 33 assists for 65 total points. So this is a guy, now look, yes, I know what you're thinking. All those games, all those points came with the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that won a lot. Let's just say a lot. They won quite a bit of games, and they won some championships for sure. So I understand that criticism, but once again, even, on a really, really bad Chicago Blackhawk team, he put up some pretty respectable numbers and has continued to produce year after year, even off of the Tampa Bay Lightning roster. So this is a guy that's proven he's a consistent player in terms of offensive output, but also in his two-way game. He's not known as a defensive guy. I'm not going to label him as such, but he's definitely not a liability in his own zone as well. Now look, he has been injured often, and that is absolutely a concern, which is not something you want to see, or hear I should say, from a depth option. You don't want your depth option to be a guy that gets injured easily. It's been a couple years in a row he's been injured. He's missed 20, 30 games or so both years. So that is absolutely something to keep in mind. But once again, his experience on and off the ice attributes, of course, his offensive abilities as well. I think there's a lot of reasons to bring in Tyler Johnson to this team, especially now that, look, we're so deep into free agency. He's not going to get what he wants. He's going to get a really cheap prove-it contract, and that's where a team like the Ottawa Senators can kind of swoop in and get a hell of a discount that could potentially sign a guy that, a few months from now looks like an absolute steal, and we're wondering how this guy was available so late into the open market, the free agency market. So I think this is a guy that's worth taking a swing on. This is a guy that brings, once again, a lot of experience and offensive ability to a bottom 6 that desperately needs it. I know we have Perron. I know we have Amadio. Let's continue to bring in some good experience. And, of course, Tyler Johnson would absolutely continue to do that. And once again, you have to be concerned about the injuries. You have to be concerned about a lot of his points coming off the power play. And you absolutely have to be concerned about his dip in the faceoff rate. But you know what? This is a guy that's well established in the National Hockey League. He played on a really, really rough Chicago Blackhawk team last year. And yeah, you'll absolutely have to expect a dip in production, especially, given less of a role here in Ottawa. But he's still a playmaker who's established himself in the National Hockey League. And is a guy that, look, it's not like his offensive abilities just disappeared like that, okay? They still exist. And I think having a playmaker like that with, scoring pedigree can absolutely help, especially in the bottom 6. Look, there's going to be injuries. Guys are going to have to be moved up. You're going to want to have guys that can fill in the bottom 6 and not really create a huge hole. You want guys that can move up and down the lineup. This is a guy that can do it all, really, this is a guy that can play in your top 6 in the worst case scenario if there's an injury. But more realistically, let's say there's an injury and a David Perron or whatever gets moved up, or Amadio, this guy can easily slide into the 3rd or 4th line, and there will be no real dip in offensive output from the bottom 6. So that's why I think Tyler Johnson should be a target for the Ottawa Senators, especially because he probably could be brought in for a much cheaper contract that he probably could have got a few weeks ago. But yeah, so I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say about this one. Do you agree with me? Or are you not a fan of Tyler Johnson? I really understand both sides of the coin. It's absolutely a gamble. But once again, at such a cheap contract at probably a year for maybe $1 million, $1.5 million, I think it's worth it. That's just me. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. So the next player I want to take a look at is Oliver Kellington, the left-handed defenseman out of Calgary, who's 6 foot tall and also 33 years old, just like Tyler Johnson. And on the theme of 33, he also played in 33 games last year with the Calgary Flames. Now look, I mentioned that because, he didn't miss 2/3 of the year due to a physical injury, and he didn't miss the year prior due to a physical injury, like, of course, Tyler Johnson. He missed it because he wanted to take time off to focus on his mental health, his mental well-being. And that is really commendable to me. I have a lot of respect for that. You don't see it enough in society, let alone in professional sports, in the public eye. A lot of these athletes feel afraid to do what they need to do what's best for themselves. And I have a lot of respect for Oliver Kellington to take a step back and focus on his well-being before stepping back into the game. I have a lot of respect for that, and it shows how high of a character guy he is. I don't want to sound cliche, but not everyone would do that, right? And he risked his career. He risked a lot of things to focus on himself, and I have a lot of respect for that, and I think you should too, to be honest. And I have a lot of respect for the fact that as well, when he did return, he had a higher average time on ice after returning than he did before he left for a year and a half. So this guy is a player. This guy is a high character guy as well. So on and off the ice, I'm a big fan of Oliver Kellington. Last year in those 33 games, he scored 3 goals and 5 assists for 8 total points, while averaging 17-15 on the ice per game. He was also ranked 6th on the Calgary Flames for blocked shots with 51, while playing 1/3 of the games last year. That is very impressive to me. This guy was laying his body on the line at an unprecedented rate. And once again, he cracked the top 10, was close to top 5. When playing 1/3 of the time, most of the guys on Calgary were playing, especially in the top 5. So this is a guy that, can really do it all. And, I'll talk about this later, with the Shattenkirks and Barrys of the world. The reason I really like, Oliver Kellington, I think he's a guy with a lot of versatility, kind of similar to Tyler Johnson. This is a guy that for a long time was playing in the top 4 of Calgary. This is a guy that's played a lot of minutes for the Calgary Flames as well, as I just mentioned. And I'll talk about it in a second here as well. And his NHL career has also played a good chunk of time. So this is a guy that I think has room to grow. And this is a guy that can play throughout your lineup. Once again, if you have a depth guy, you don't want him to be one-dimensional, offensively minded. You don't want him to be, a guy that can't really play anywhere but in a certain spot. Oliver Kellington's a guy that really can do it all. And yeah, look, he's not the most physical guy, but he's definitely a solid two-way guy. And for a 6th, 7th defenseman, that's exactly what you're looking for. And now look, in his NHL career, 201 games, he has played 17 goals, 38 assists, for 55 total points, while averaging 15.39 on the ice per game. His Corsi for percentage during his NHL career is also 50.7%. That is 50.7%, which is very good. Now, if you don't know what Corsi for percentage is, it means the time his team had the puck when he was on the ice. So more often than not, when he was on the ice, his team had possession of the puck, which means he's a very solid, puck mover, of course. He's not killing the team defensively. He's not a guy that's out there turning it over constantly. But more so, this is a guy you can trust in your own zone and, once again, throughout the entire surface of the ice as well. Now, as I kind of alluded to before, there's other big names on the market on the blue line, like a Kevin Shattenkirk, like a Tyson Barrie, like a Justin Schultz. I understand that. These are big names, but there's a couple of reasons I don't think the Ottawa Senators will take a look at them, and why I don't think the Ottawa Senators should take a look at them. Firstly, they're going to be very expensive. I think Shattenkirk, Barrie, and Schultz, they're not going to be the exact same amount per. I think a Shattenkirk will make a little less than a Barrie and Schultz. But these are guys that are likely going to make, upwards of $2+ million. Shattenkirk may be below that, but Schultz and Barrie probably $2 to $3 million, I would expect. So I think a guy like Oliver Kellington, you can get probably for around $1 million at this point, especially with those bigger names on the board. And on top of all of that, he's just the more well-rounded guy. Now look, once again, he's not a defensive guy or an offensive guy. He's a two-way guy, and that is exactly what you need as a depth, defenseman. You want a player that can play in all situations and who doesn't exactly hurt you in either end, who can play a solid 10-15 minutes, fill in when needed, and once again, can provide solid depth if you need a change in the pairings, or more so, if you're a young defenseman like Jacob Bernard-Docker or Tyler Kleven, or a veteran like Travis Hamonic are struggling. Now, once again, speaking of those three, I have to mention this. The reason this may not happen is because of Jacob Bernard-Docker and Travis Hamonic. Tyler Kleven's making this team for sure. We'll talk about that in about 5 or so minutes. I have no doubt in my mind that Clevin will be on the Ottawa Senators next year. So if Kellington comes in, he's a 6th or 7th defenseman. He's not taking Clevin's spot. However, what are you going to do with Jacob Bernard-Docker? What are you going to do with Travis Hamonic? JBD, they've tried to ship him out. There's been not much interest. You're going to lose him through waivers, and they're not going to do that. So I don't know what they're going to do. I think Jacob Bernard-Docker is a player that they absolutely should keep. But I think he would be more effective as the 6th, 7th defenseman and rotating there with Oliver Kellington as he gets more reps and he gets more comfortable in the NHL game and gets stronger in the NHL game. Once again, I think JBD is fine, but I cannot see a scenario where the Ottawa Senators roll out a third pairing of 2 rookies of JBD and Tyler Clevin, and I can't see Travis Hamonic playing consistent minutes. So, and that brings me to the next point. What do they do with Travis Hamonic? They say they're not going to buy him out. I don't see how they trade him. I don't see where he goes at this point. Maybe they try to bury him in the minors. Maybe they bury him as the 8th defenseman, so to speak. But I also can't see them carrying 2 defensemen that are not playing. So that's where I'm kind of caught at here, where if they don't do anything with Hamonic and nothing happens with JBD, this move won't happen. But I really am not excited about the prospect of 2 rookies playing on the same pairing, on the third pairing. That kind of just feels like a disaster to me in the waiting. And more so, I don't want Hamonic being that replacement who plays nearly half the year. No offense to Hamonic. He's a fine guy off the ice, a pretty solid player on the ice at times, but that has not been the case over the last year or so. He's certainly taken a step back, and he should not be playing, at least 1/3 of the games. This is a guy that should be playing minimally as possible. And if you can get rid of him, you probably should if you can, because I think a guy like Kellington, once again, could be an upgrade and can help that third pairing out, where, once again, the 2 rookies there are going to struggle. You're going to want to have a guy there that can help mentor them and help fill in if necessary. I think Kellington is the great answer for that problem. But once again, what are you going to do with JBD and Hamonic? That has to be sorted out before any scenario where Kellington signs with the Sens. Now, last point on Kellington, as I kind of alluded to earlier, he's probably one of the more under-the-radar players in the free agency pool as of right now. And in my opinion, whether he signs with Ottawa or another team, probably will be one of those steals, as I kind of mentioned with Tyler Johnson, out of this free agency pool, where you're like, how did that guy sign for so little and drop for so long and get signed so late? I think that's exactly what Oliver Kellington's going to be, because he was a consistent top 4 guy in Calgary before stepping out of the game for a year and a half. And then when he returned, as I already mentioned, he played over a minute and a half more on average. So this is a guy that was a consistent top 4 defenseman on Calgary. He was playing there in top 4 minutes before with some big names. So he actually forced himself into the conversation in that top 4 against some really big names, right? So that is really impressive. And once again, in a much more laid-back third pairing 7th defenseman role, I think he will absolutely excel and will provide much needed depth and security for the defense, and more so for that third pairing. Once again, we know there's going to be injuries, and Travis Hamonic or Jacob Bernard-Docker with Tyler Clevin, those 3 out of 6 is very weak for your bottom half of your defensive pairs. You need a stronger depth option, and Oliver Kellington is absolutely that option. Now, I also wanted to mention this. J.P. Barry is his agent. He's also the agent of Tyler Johnson. So on top of the fact of, their age being the same at 33, they also have the same agent. So how about that? Now, with that, let's get to the final player I'm going to take a look at, who the Ottawa Senators may target in free agency. And this probably won't come as a shock to you. Many of you probably are screaming at your screen right now, Brandon, what took you so long? Why are you not mentioning his name? Well, I'm going to now. Nick Cousins is the last player I think the Ottawa Senators conceivably could target in this free agency pool that remains. Once again, we're really late into the dance now, not a lot of options left. But Ottawa, in my opinion, certainly needs help in the bottom 6, particularly for that 4th line center role. And Nick Cousins could be the absolute perfect answer and solution for that role. The center is 31 years old, so basically in the prime of his NHL career, and he's 5'11". Last year in 69 games with the Florida Panthers, 7 goals, 8 assists, 15 points. 2 of those points, by the way, came in a game against, of course, your Ottawa Senators, a 6-0 loss to Florida. He got the game-winning goal in that game as well. So, hey, you know what? He's had some success against us. Maybe he could have some success with us. His Corsi C4 percentage was 54.5%. Once again, for a bottom 6 guy, primarily on your 4th line, to be so strong, defensively and with, the puck possession. That is such an encouraging sign, and that is exactly why I would love Nick Cousins for the fourth line center role. He was also ranked number 6 on the Florida Panthers in hits last year with 130 hits. He also had 3 game-winning goals, which was also tied for 4th on the Florida Panthers in the regular season. So he's got the clutch gene as well, which you can't teach. And once again, from your bottom 6, you need those clutch guys, especially come playoff time, that can step up. Nick Cousins is absolutely that guy. This is a guy with a lot of playoff experience as well. And he also has a very good faceoff rate. 53.1% was his faceoff rate last year. And during his NHL career, he has played in 592 games, scoring 71 goals, 109 assists, for 180 total points, which is ironic, and that's kind of crazy. A lot of similar numbers in this video. That's the same number he had for hits this year, so that's kind of wacky. I'm not going to lie. He certainly did not do that on purpose, but 180 total points in his NHL career and just under 600 career games with a Corsi for percentage of 51.5%. So in his NHL career, this is a guy, more often than not, his team has the puck possession when he's on the ice, which shows how strong a defensive player he is. Now again, he's a cup winner, he's an agitator, he's a gritty player, he's a penalty killer, he's a strong defensive player. He's exactly what you want from your fourth line. He's the ideal fourth line center. Yeah, his skating's a bit slower, but he can absolutely still keep up with the National Hockey League game and pace. And once again, the face-off abilities, the puck possession abilities, the clutch genes, and once again, the physical edge he brings, I absolutely love for the fourth line, especially at basically a league minimum deal. If you can get it done for that, this is a guy, again, with a lot of experience as well. Again, remember, this is a guy that's played a lot in the playoffs, 63 games to be exact, so he's got some solid playoff experience. He also has some great experience overall in his NHL career. So I think that's one player that many of you guys would agree with. It just seems like a perfect fit for the Ottawa Senators, and I wouldn't be shocked. I think out of Kellington, Johnson, and Nick Cousins, I think Nick Cousins is the most likely player to be signed by the Ottawa Senators in free agency, purely because he really fits a direct positional need that I don't know if the depth players and the prospects in the system can fill out. So with that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below about those 3 players I took a look at. Once again, Johnson, probably unlikely. I just don't see it working out, especially with Amadio and Perron already here. But again, that flexibility would be really, really nice. Kellington, until Hamnick or JBD, one of them are gone, don't really see that happening, which is really disappointing because he would be a huge boost to that blue line, especially for their depth. And Nick Cousins, again, the glaring hole for the Senators roster right now is that fourth line center position. And of course, that third pairing, which you kind of already touched on, but we'll see what happens with that. With the fourth line center role, that's a role right now that can absolutely be filled without question through free agency. And Nick Cousins could be the answer to that. So with that, look, I'll mention this briefly because I said I would. Guys like Angus Crookshank, I think Crookshank will absolutely make this team, probably as a fourth line winger, maybe even on the third line, especially if we don't bring in a free agent before camp begins. And Tyler Kleven, as I already mentioned, will absolutely make the team out of camp and going into the regular season. Guys you should look out for that will be on the bubble and will absolutely be pushing for roster spots includes guys like Zach Ossipchuk and Stephen Holiday, of course, 2 strong centers who absolutely have, in my opinion, NHL futures. Max Gannett as well, Oscar Peterson, a winger, and Tyler Boucher as well. These are guys that will make pushes but are unlikely to make the team. Now with that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and besides that, I will see you all soon. Go Sens, go!